When I was young, we were still living in Chicago at the time, so younger than 7th grade, but old enough to remember at this late phase of my life, as we were camping kind of folks, and we had gone to Bar Harbor in Maine to Acadia National Park. And so we were camping in this place, and my dad had mapped out a trail for us to bite off this one day. If I was, say, 9, my brother was 6. And so I'm sure that it was within the scope of our capacity. We headed out on this trail and found any number of amazing and fabulous things, including beaver dams, which were not common in suburban Chicago. And were super cool to see. And as we continued to hike and had good energy and spirit, my parents began to realize that the trail was becoming less obvious the further we proceeded. And as we got a little further down the road, we recognized that the trail was marked in ways that were less familiar to us, because while we got snow in suburban Chicago, snowmobiles were not so much a thing in that place. And so the trees periodically would have a little bit of paint very high up on it. And you could, from one to the next, kind of, sort of find your way. Now, this hike that I'm sure was intended to be 1 to 2 hours in the late morning, finishing with lunch, as it dragged to 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, becoming this epic adventure. We did eventually find our ways back, but the journey did not go as expected. Fortunately, no casualties. But how often in our lives do journeys not go as expected, right? The path isn't always obvious, and the trail that we're on doesn't always go the place that we thought it would. When I was a second-year seminarian in Columbus, Ohio, Marielle and I had assumed we would be doing our pastoral internship in California and filled out our paperwork accordingly. But this was another reminder to me of the Midwest-centric nature of the Lutheran tradition in North America. And when I sat down with the contextual ed director, they said, "So how fixed are you on this California thing?" And in my head, I was thinking, Portland, Seattle, Denver's a great town. He said, "Because we've got this great spot in Youngstown." And I thought, that's not even west of here. And so we spent a lovely year in Youngstown, Ohio, or as Marielle says, "You take me to all the nice places." And so we learned a lot there as we continued on our journey. I think sometimes we can be on a journey and know exactly what is at the other end of it, and there can be adventures along the way, maybe not fun adventures. Have you seen the U-Haul trucks? A moving adventure, right? Isn't that exactly what you want when you move? An adventure, right? I'm not sure that's the best campaign, but sometimes it's the journey that is unexpected. Sometimes the destination is not always what is expected, right? You're going from one step to the next. Maybe it's Youngstown. Maybe it's Northwest Minnesota, where my first call would be. Maybe it is starting college thinking that you're moving in one direction and finishing college pointed in a completely different direction. There are any number of scenarios, relationships with meaningful people in our lives that move in one direction and then the destination changes. We don't understand how all of this happens, and we're desperately trying to find that little piece of paint to guide us to that next spot on the trail. When I think of the story that we share at the time of Epiphany, the manifestation. There are things about it that I find kind of fascinating. This business of a star, right? That's kind of hard to picture. Now, if you are into sailing, perhaps, or that type of activity, you might be a little bit more attuned to where the stars are. But of course, an overcast sky can make that a bit challenging. One of the things that I've been reminded of, again, I don't think I have too many more national park stories, but one more. We were camping at the Grand Canyon of the Gunnison River in western Colorado, which is a relatively new national park. And when we camped, we realized that every campsite around us, probably 10 or 12 of them, were occupied by park rangers, which was a little sobering. I felt very supervised. And we had a great time while we were there, and we discovered why they were there. The park, being new, had recently been designated as a dark sky park. There is this long process that you go through. Proximity to urban areas, any number of a million things that have to do with the number of flights that overfly the place. But the idea is, how dark is that place at night such that you can see the stars? Now, having served in Los Angeles, grown up in Chicago, living here, Columbus was kind of a small town to be living in for us. All of a sudden, when the sun went down, the ability to see the Milky Way with your own eyes unaided is just staggering. All of those rangers were there from different parks across the United States to train on doing night programming in a dark sky context. Now, for myself, I could look up at the stars and go, wow. But I couldn't look up at the stars and have someone say, great, now from what you see, I need you to be in Chicago next week. Right. It doesn't always jump out at us this way. But what was interesting to me in this dark sky piece is how lost we have become because of all the light pollution, as we might say, that we don't even see the stars as we might otherwise. How often in our lives are the guideposts in our journey blurred and obscured because of the busyness of this life? All of the things that happen right here, right now, all of the things that distract us, the phone in our hand, the computer on our table, the busyness of work, the shopping that has to be done. We're in that kind of quiet moment after the busy season. But nonetheless, suddenly it's like all of those things that didn't happen over the last couple of weeks and jumping onto that, right? That busyness that keeps our heads down in such a way that we cannot see the stars. We're just the first Sunday of the year. We're at the end of the season of Christmas. Tomorrow is Epiphany, the manifestation of Christ among us. We think of all that is laid out in front of us. And the funny thing is, next Sunday we drop back into ordinary time until we get to Ash Wednesday. Regular life. You know, the kind of life where you need to know what direction you're going. The last thing that I want to leave with you today is in relationship to what the wise men find when they arrive. Now, from the east is assumed a great distance, likely what today would be called Persia or Iran. This would have been a fairly epic journey. If you can remember from your high school world history classes, that Fertile Crescent and coming over and coming down into the Holy Land. That sense of journey and travel and figuring we'll stop at the palace because surely they know about kings there, right? And Herod says, so, about this king thing, they leave and they find then a child. Now, in Matthew, we have wise men. In Luke, we have shepherds. And never the two shall meet. The shepherds find a baby. The wise men find perhaps a toddler in a home with a young family. Is this what is going to shake the foundations of the earth? Is this what is going to alter the trajectory of human history? I think we have to, in addition to looking up and seeing the stars, understand that when Christ meets us in our journeys, it's not going to be as we expect. It's not going to be planned out according to our designs, but rather is going to be a child leading us towards love and away from fear. The wise men understood this once they had seen him, and they left by a different road because they knew the message had to go out. Amen.